Brian, I think really what people want to know is just the level of interest we're going to see. Of course, there's been a lot of funds that have gone into the US ETFs. Will we see a similar sort of flow for Hong Kong, do you think?
Well, thanks, Annabelle, for having me today. It's a pleasure as we kind of usher in the next frontier for Hong Kong ETFs. And we're excited to welcome the first Asia's first virtual asset spot ETFs with the listing of 3 Bitcoin spot ETFs and 3 Ether spot ETFs as well. I think this is really going to go a long way to enrich our product diversity and also just further strengthen Hong Kong's position as ETFs marketplace. I think for investors as well, this is actually going to bring out a product that's listed on a familiar exchange for them that really brings a scalable link from traditional finance to virtual assets. And I think with these products, it's really going to help to kind of reduce some of the complexities and burdens of owning virtual assets outright. And they'll be able to now access these products in probably a little less than an hour from now on Hong Kong Exchange. And they'll be able to do so in a very familiar wrapper that's liquid, transparent, and also trades during Asian trading hours. And I think that's very, very important now.
With all of those positive aspects to it then, but what are you actually expecting in terms of demand for these? What sort of AUM, for instance, to the year end?
Yeah. So, I mean, we don't put any kind of expectations around there. I think for us, this is day one of the journey. This has been kind of the last couple of years. We've been really working towards bringing this out into the market. A year ago, we brought out the futures-based spot ETFs. Today we're going to mark the listing of Asia's first spot virtual asset ETFs. And you can kind of see from the background here, there's a lot of interest for these kind of products in the market.
The futures ETFs, though, haven't seen great subscriptions so far. So would you expect the demand to be better than what we've seen for the likes of CSOPs, for instance, or Samsung Asset Management's futures and futures ETFs?
Yeah, I think the futures-based ETFs, I think they've actually started to gain some momentum this year. We've seen really good increase in trading volume this year. They're trading about 50 million Hong Kong dollars a day, so we've seen an increase there. And they've also raised over 500 million Hong Kong dollars in assets. So I think as the market has kind of turned around for Bitcoin and Ether and seeing better performance, we're seeing more investors coming into that space. And I think now with the spot ETFs, I think this will just be another addition, just kind of enrich the product diversity. And I do think there is demand for investors to get this spot assets, the Bitcoin and the Ethereum assets here. So I think this will be really good.
When it comes to diversity, then when could we expect perhaps different structured products to come to the market? Because I think also what investors want to see in Hong Kong is anything that's sort of linked to derivatives, for instance.
Yeah, I think anytime we, at HKEX, we're always trying to create really a vibrant, product network effect. So we'll start with the ETFs and start to build that out. There could be levered and inverse that comes down the road, structured products, derivatives. Again, we want to start with the cash products, build up the initial demand from there, and then from there we can start to kind of expand that product ecosystem.
So you think levered and inverse is what's next for you?
Well, I think we'll continue to kind of iterate here. I think we can continue to go into the physical spot assets, maybe composite types of products, eventually getting into maybe levered and inverse types of strategies. There are needs for investors to be able to get access to inverse types of strategies for hedging needs and different things along those lines. So there's possibilities of that down the road, but we need to see how this one kind of develops and matures before we kind of go to that space.
What could really, of course, stimulate a lot of demand would be whether these ETFs are included into the ETF Connect program to give mainland Chinese investors access. When would that happen?
Yeah. So I think that's a great question, and just a couple of weeks ago, the SFC and CSRC had a joint announcement that actually is going to reduce the product eligibility, so lower some of the eligibility thresholds, so lowering the AUM requirement, lowering the securities weighting, and so now when this goes into effect, and hopefully that'll come into effect here in the next several months, what it'll do is it'll allow ETFs for the southbound ETFs in Hong Kong to hold up to about 40% international securities in there. So I think this is going to be a great source of product innovation, seeing more issuers come into this market, more products being eligible both for mainland investors via Hong Kong and for international investors going into the mainland. And virtual assets, I mean, we can look at that kind of down the road, but I think we're just excited about the new kind of enhancement that we're going to have that was just announced a couple of weeks ago.
So if there's 4 ETFs right now that are on the ETF Connect program out of, say, 180 or so in the city,
yeah.
How many more then do you think will be eligible with the new criteria?
I mean, right now, I mean, we'll go through the review process here in a couple of months, and we'll see kind of where everything kind of falls. But I do think we'll start to see more ETFs included both in the North and the South to be included in ETF Connect. And again, I think it'll, for us, it's less about what will be included kind of day one in this initial kind of phase, but again, I think it's going to allow ETF issuers, new and potential and existing ETF issuers, to bring out new kind of strategies that will help to meet demand in the mainland.
And last year, of course, and this is a bit of a bigger picture question, but we did have the Saudi ETF listed in the city.
Yep.
What are you doing in the other direction?
Yeah, so, as you mentioned, late last year, we listed the CSOP Saudi Arabia ETF. That ETF has done really well and now has over 8.5 billion Hong Kong dollars worth of AUM. It's the largest Saudi Arabia ETF in the world. And this is all part of really the, Hong Kong and China having better connections with the Middle East and vice versa. So that was the first stage of it all. We would love to see some of our products and China equity and Hong Kong equities go to the Saudi Arabia ETF market. And I think we'll work with, our counterparts over there, the ETF issuers in Saudi Arabia, to eventually make that happen. But again, Saudi Arabia ETF here was the first step. Next step will be to bring products there in due course.